Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Part 142 based on novel. So let's start. Hua Yuhao recalled the interactions between Tang Ya and Zhongli Wu previously, and discovered some useful things. For example, the masquerade Doluor had used his demonic maggot to scare Tang Ya and cast a shadow in her heart. Furthermore, Zhongli Wu pampered her a lot. It didn't seem like they had romantic feelings between them. Rather, it felt like Zhongli Wu was protecting her. What kind of feeling was it? It was very weird. Waiting was sometimes a torture, especially in the situation that Hua Yuhao was facing. Waiting for an hour was like waiting for half a century. Finally, Hua Yuhao calmed himself down. Things should be fine since there's been no reaction for half a day. It seems like I'm in luck. After walking out from the tent, Hua Yuhao observed his surroundings as he proceeded towards the canteen. Indeed, Tang Ya and Zhongli Wu were no longer there. Things were very normal. He went to find Nangong Wan again. Seeing that he was fine, he verified that he had averted the crisis. The afternoon passed just like that. Hua Yuhao only completely calmed down after lunch. He meditated in his tent for an hour before Nangong Wan came to find him. 7. Let's go and take a look. Nangong Wan's voice rose outside the tent. Hua Yuhao drifted up and walked out of the tent. Not only was Nangong Wan around, but there were also 6 other evil soul masters with weaker cultivations. They all had at least 6 rings. According to what Nangong Wan had told Hua Yuhao, the Holy Ghost Church sent only those who were at least soul emperors to the front line. There were very few evil soul masters, and nurturing them wasn't easy. It was very likely they would die at the front lines. That was why only those who could protect themselves were sent over. Go! Hua Yuhao calmly said, and followed Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan said, 3 and 4 have been sent to supervise the 4th Soul Engineer Legion. Let's go take a look at the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion. Alright, Hua Yuhao replied. Having Nangong Wan as a mole was very effective. The intelligence that he brought to Shrek Academy gave the Academy a new understanding of the Sun Moon Empire's setup. The Sun Moon Empire had originally only had 10 Soul Engineer Legions. However, all the other Soul Engineer Legions from other empires were brought under their control after the war started, allowing them to form another 5 Soul Engineer Legions. In this way, the Sun Moon Empire now had a total of 15 Soul Engineer Legions. Among them, the 5 Soul Engineer Legions in the hand that protects the nation were the strongest. The other 10 Soul Engineer Legions were ordered. Right now, there were 5 Soul Engineer Legions at the front line. Apart from the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion and Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion, there were also the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Soul Engineer Legions. As for the other 10 Soul Engineer Legions, the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion was stationed in the capital. Unless they were commanded by Shu Tianran personally, they wouldn't leave easily. The Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion was also in the capital right now. The Evil Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion had teamed up with 2 other Soul Engineer Legions to deal with the Soul Master teams from the Star Luo Empire that were scattered all over the Sun Moon Empire's territories. The remaining Soul Engineer Legions were also arranged in their own ways. The Sun Moon Empire relied on these 5 Soul Engineer Legions and their elite soul tools at the front lines to suppress the coalition army of the 3 empires of the original Doluor continent. In fact, the Heavenly Soul Empire had been battered so heavily that they were quite afraid by now. In the fights before, they had suffered heavy casualties. To keep Heavenly Spirit City intact was already the best that they could achieve at this stage. The initiative lay in the hands of the Sun Moon Empire now. The Sun Moon Empire had their own plans. In the report that Zhu Zi gave to Shu Tianran, they indicated that they wanted to consolidate the new territories they had obtained from the Heavenly Soul Empire first. Given the strength of the Sun Moon Empire, they could definitely take the entire Heavenly Soul Empire down. However, that would also mean that the Sun Moon Empire would need to protect more land. When that happened, the Sun Moon Empire would also have to take on the Doling and Star Luo empires directly. Once the Heavenly Soul Empire was destroyed, the remaining 2 empires would have no choice except to fight all out. Along with the threat of Shrek City, The Sun Moon Empire would also have no other option but to fight. To the overall plans of the Sun Moon Empire, this wasn't a good thing. At least, it wasn't good if they weren't prepared. Without the confidence of attaining complete victory, Juzi suggested that the Sun Moon Empire shouldn't rush to destroy the Heavenly Soul Empire. Xu Tianran adopted her suggestion. As he consolidated the territories that they had, he quickly adjusted their resources to produce more soul tool accessories. Through soul tool technology, he slowly influenced the people in the parts of the Heavenly Soul Empire that had fallen to the Sun Moon Empire. This would gradually get them to accept reality. War couldn't achieve their aims immediately. Juzi's plan would take as long as 10 years. In her complete plan, domination of the continent would take at least that long. Although Xu Tianran thought that this was a little too long, her detailed plan still managed to convince him. Even the senior commanders of the Sun Moon Empire approved of her plan after reviewing it. The plan raised Juzi's reputation in the Sun Moon Empire. After this plan was drafted, she had headed into the north to gather rare metals. However, she had bumped into Hu Yuhao, who had ruined her plan. Juzi's status in the military was very important to Xu Tianran. As a result, he even took the initiative to cover up her setback. An unbeaten female god of war was very helpful for morale. It was something that mustn't be affected easily. Currently, the 5 Soul Engineer legions at the front line had been there for some time. Among them, the Imperial Dragon and Terraclaw Soul Engineer legions were very strong. They didn't even give face to the Holy Ghost Church. The Holy Ghost Church had faced quite a few problems trying to supervise these 2 Soul Engineer legions. They only took orders directly from the Sun Moon Empire's imperial family. Although Zhongli Wu had wanted to force a check on them, the Holy Ghost Church still had many objectives to be achieved in the Sun Moon Empire. It wasn't advisable for him to offend Xu Tianran. After all, Xu Tianran was the emperor. The Sun Moon Empire was also very influential and powerful now. Although the Holy Ghost Church was also very powerful, and even had 2 ultimate Doluor, how could a sect compete with an entire empire in terms of overall abilities? As a result, Zhongli Wu could only bear it and perform circumstantial supervision on them. While the Beast Lord-ranked Soul Engineer legions were unwilling, the other 3 ordinary Soul Engineer legions were helpless. Just like how Zhongli Wu didn't want to offend Xu Tianran also didn't want to offend the Holy Ghost Church. There was something that he shared with the Holy Ghost Church. They wanted to borrow each other's strength to deal with Shrek Academy. While Shrek Academy hadn't seemed to do anything in the war so far, both Xu Tianran and Zhongli Wu were very wary of them. "We're here." Nangong Wn alerted Hu Yuhao. There was a soul formation not far in front of them. There were already senior commanders from the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion waiting outside the soul formation after they received their orders. The person standing in front was a middle-aged man around 50 years old. He was tall and burly, and his aura was overwhelming. He was obviously a Soul Doluor. "Greetings, Your Majesty." That middle-aged man came up to receive them. Your Majesty was how they referred to titled Doluor. In the world of titled Doluor, they didn't call one another that. However, it was how lower-ranked Soul Masters showed their respect when they saw titled Doluor. "Show us the way." Nangong Wan was much more arrogant when he saw these ordinary Soul Masters. Hu Yuhao didn't say anything. This middle-aged man was the Legion commander of the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion, Guo Nu. He was a Soul Doluor, and a Class 8 Soul Engineer. Ordinary Soul Engineer Legions were led by Class 8 Soul Engineers. After all, there were very few Class 9 Soul Engineers, even in the Sun Moon Empire. Guo Nu stood to one side and gave way to the both of them. He personally showed them the way. This was Hu Yuhao's first time entering a soul formation of the Sun Moon Empire without fighting them. After entering, he immediately sensed a strong killing aura sweeping across him. Lethal soul tools were neatly arranged, almost all long-range soul cannons. Looking in from the outside, it really looked like a forest of steel. Hu Yuhao made an estimate as he looked over. There were more than 100 long-range soul cannons. As for why they were of different classes, it was because their effective ranges and strengths were different. Not only could they overlap one another, but they could also conserve soul power for short-range attacks. These soul cannons were just covering the perimeter. There were larger soul tools in the middle. There was even a Class 9 soul tool, and soul tools that Hua Yuhao didn't know the names to. Soon enough, Hua Yuhao saw the elongated warehouses in the soul formation. Overall, they looked narrow and long, and they were placed to the sides of the soul formation, so that they could replenish it at any time. There were 500 soul engineers in this ordinary soul engineer legion. Not only were they fully equipped with soul tools, they even had linked soul tools. Once they attacked, they were very destructive. The soul tools they had were definitely much stronger than the ones Shrek City had before. Di Tian's wariness of humans was not unfounded. As soul tools developed, the balance between soul beasts and humans was disrupted. Although soul beasts had the beast god, humans were overall getting much stronger than soul beasts. Given such a soul formation, even a 100,000-man army might not be able to breach it. Linked soul tools could greatly harm them before the soul tools exhausted their power. This was also why a soul engineer legion was so terrifying. They simply toured the soul formation in a round of supervision. To the other soul engineers, this was a routine inspection, and it wasn't their first time. However, Hua Yuhao was delighted. Although he couldn't imprint the production method of every soul tool there into memory, he could still remember the arrangement of this soul formation, the uses of the soul tools, and how they coordinated with one another. This was undoubtedly great knowledge for the future 3 soul engineer legions of Shrek Academy. Are both of you coming to our side to rest and take a cup of tea? Guo Enyu asked respectfully. He didn't dare to treat evil soul masters poorly. He wasn't even a titled Dolu or. His Soul Engineer Legion was also not as great as the Soul Engineer Legions in the hand that protects the nation. He couldn't afford to offend these powerful evil soul masters. All right, we shall do so. I wonder if Commander Guo has any good stuff. Nangong Wan asked. I've prepared them for both of you, Guo Na replied softly. Guo Enyu's tent was to the left of the soul formation. Every commander of a Soul Engineer Legion had his own tent. The so-called getting a cup of tea was in fact a feast. Guo Enyu had long prepared things. He invited Hua Yuhao, Nangong Wan, and the 6 evil soul masters into his tent for the feast. He first gave them a toast before asking his subordinates to bring some other stuff in. Guo Enyu smiled as he said, "Your Majesty, please put in some good words for me in front of the imperial tutor." After this, he gestured, and a few of his subordinates opened a few cases. The aura of metal mixed with a killing aura was released. Nangong Wan's eyes brightened, and he subconsciously said, "This is great stuff. Although they aren't very strong, they are still decent enough." There were 4 cases. One of them contained 3 Class 7 stationary soul cannon shells. The other 3 cases contained Class 5 stationary soul cannon shells. There were 10 of them in each case. Although they were only Class 5 and 7 soul cannon shells, there were a large number of them. If they were sold, they could be exchanged for an astronomical number of gold soul coins. Soul Engineer Legions lacked everything except for soul tools. Furthermore, Guo Enyu was clearly aware that evil soul masters loved stationary soul cannon shells. They were powerful, and had a great effective range. At any time, they were strategic resources. Even if they were sold somewhere else and to any empire, they were well loved. 7. Keep them for now. We can divide them later. Commander Guo is too kind. It seems like the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion will only get stronger under your leadership. Although Nangong Wan was greedy, his own life was more important. He gave all of them to Hua Yuhao as a gift. At the very least, he hoped Hua Yuhao would be more willing to remove his restrictions in the future. Hua Yuhao naturally didn't stand on ceremony. This was good stuff. He had used almost all of the stationary soul cannon shells he had obtained from Radiant City during the Beast Wave. What he lacked right now was advanced stationary soul cannon shells. Seeing that Hua Yuhao had stashed the stationary soul cannon shells, Guo Na felt that he had no choice, even though he felt pained by his decision. If he didn't build up his relationship with these evil soul masters, he didn't know what kind of problems he would face in the future. After putting all the stationary soul cannon shells away, Hua Yuhao returned to their table and lifted a wine cup with his right hand. "Thanks, Commander Guo, for your precious gift. Come, let me give you a toast. Guo Enyu quickly stood up and drank with Huo Yuhao. As Huo Yuhao drank, he gently touched Nangong Wan with his toes. When he sat down, Nangong Wan immediately raised his wine cup and gave Guo Enyu a toast as well. Taking this opportunity, Huo Yuhao rubbed his right hand across his forehead. It seemed like he was fixing his hair, but an almost invisible ball of distorted light went under the table just as his hand went down. If one could observe it more closely, one might discover that there seemed to be something inside the sphere. After eating a full meal, Guo Enyu personally sent Huo Yuhao, Nangong Wan, and the rest out of the soul formation. After the evil soul masters had left, his expression also turned colder. As long as one was a real soul master, or even a soul engineer, who would fancy interacting with evil soul masters, who killed without blinking an eye? He sighed silently. I hope nothing goes wrong with relying on evil soul masters to achieve domination. He shook his head a little helplessly before he turned around. However, he didn't know that a ball of white light had slipped out from under the table in his tent. It quickly hid in a dark corner to the side. As Nangong Wan and Huo Yuhao walked back, Nangong Wan glanced curiously at Huo Yuhao. He asked, "Have you done it?" Huo Yuhao smiled and replied, "Yes." Nangong Wan was even more stunned. He didn't see Huo Yuhao doing anything at all. Huo Yuhao had only signaled him to give Guo Enyu a toast once. Don't tell me that he did it then. When Huo Yuhao saw his puzzled look, he said, "If you could tell, don't you think Guo Enyu could tell too? Don't worry. When things are done, I'll fulfill my promise to you." Nangong Wan nodded. He had no choice now but to believe Huo Yuhao. He trusted Shrek's credibility. After returning to his tent, Huo Yuhao sat down cross-legged and circulated his soul power. He forced the alcohol that he had consumed earlier out of his body. The first step of the plan had been completed. The next step was to be carried out later tonight. He entered meditation, continuing to cultivate. Even in enemy territory, he kept on improving his abilities. Without sufficient ability, he couldn't do anything. With something as good as the manifold mysterious ice essence in his body, along with the help of his spiritual soul core, he felt that his daily cultivation rewarded him greatly. This feeling spurred him on to work even harder. Night fell. As usual, Huo Yuhao went to the canteen to eat his dinner. After that, he silently returned to his tent. The other evil soul masters were also acting as they usually did. After these last few days of observation, Huo Yuhao had familiarized himself with the surroundings of his camp. He used his spiritual power to observe the route that Tang San had to take. After verifying that she had returned to her tent, he entered meditation and waited. He had realized that her routine was very similar to his. Apart from her daily meals, she would cultivate in her own tent. From the outside, one could subtly hear her breathing. Evil soul masters were very relaxed here. Even Zhongli Wu didn't summon them together for anything. Huo Yuhao had seen the elders and worshippers here. There were 2 transcendent Doluo from the Holy Ghost Church's worship hall here as well. They weren't all evil soul masters. The Scorpion Tiger Doluo Zhongpeng was here, also from the worship hall. He was staying not far from Tang San. When Tang San went to the canteen to eat, Huo Yuhao saw that Zhongpeng sat beside her on a few occasions. He was the only other person who could sit beside her, apart from Zhongli Wu. Zhongpeng was by her side the first time Huo Yuhao saw Tang San as an evil soul master. In his opinion, Zhongpeng was probably assigned to protect her. While Tang San's cultivation couldn't compare to Ma Xiaotao's, the Holy Ghost Church did this to supervise her training and protect her. The Scorpion Tiger Doluo wasn't someone who could be dealt with easily. He was bound to become a barrier to their efforts in the near future. Although Huo Yuhao already had a plan, he didn't know what would happen during the process of carrying it out. He could only take it one step at a time. He hoped that everything would progress in the right direction. The sky turned darker and darker, and the base also quieted down. After a day of training, the ordinary soldiers also returned to their own bunks to rest. Only the night guards continued their patrols. Of course, the defenses of the soul formations were still very strict, even at night. The tent of the commander of the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion. After having dinner, Guan carried out a few administrative duties after he returned. His tent was where he discussed things with his subordinates. He didn't sleep there. After finishing his administrative matters, Guan left the commander's tent and went to take a look at his soul formation. Before he slept every night, he would carry out a routine check to keep any problems from cropping up. After that, he would return to his own tent to rest. As he stepped out from his tent, a ball of white light slowly crept out from the corner. It had done very well to conceal its aura earlier. Guan didn't discover anything, even though he was a soul Doluor. After it appeared, it silently took from and gradually expanded. It slowly adopted a human form, ending up looking like Hua Yuhao. That afternoon, Hua Yuhao had left this ball of spiritual power in the tent just as Nangong Wn was raising a toast to Guan. To ensure that it could last long enough, Hua Yuhao didn't attach a soul skill to it. He only used imitation. After adopting a human form, this spiritual body looked a little illusory. As time passed, it had still lost a lot of spiritual power. However, it still had enough to complete Hua Yuhao's plan. A small ring appeared on the spiritual entity's hand as it flipped its wrist, and light flashed. It was the Starlight Sapphire ring. When Hua Yuhao had left behind this ball of light, it was this ring that was left inside of it. The ring shone with light, and Hua Yuhao revealed a smile on his face. He retrieved a long box from the ring and placed it on the table inside the tent. He looked a little unwilling when he saw this box. If he had any other choice, he wouldn't have chosen to take it out. His spiritual power spread and formed a spiritual barrier inside the tent, isolating the auras both inside and outside the tent. Nangong Wn had informed him of the habits of the Legion commanders of the Soul Engineer Legions. Hua Yuhao knew that Guan wouldn't return after leaving. He would go straight to sleep after his routine check. This tent was the safest place to be right now. No surveillance soul tools would be covering this area, either. After setting up this spiritual barrier, Hua Yuhao's spiritual entity looked much more illusory. He had turned almost completely transparent. He carefully opened the box. As the box opened, Hua Yuhao's spiritual entity was the first to bear the brunt of it. And tremendous shock shook him. If his spiritual power wasn't strong enough, his spiritual entity would have been dissipated. Hua Yuhao was also horrified. Fortunately, his spiritual power was in the concrete material realm. Otherwise, he would have been in big trouble. There was a long cannon shell lying inside the box. What was released earlier was the aura of armored cavalry. When it swept by, Hua Yuhao's spiritual entity had almost dissipated. If Nangong Wan saw this, he would immediately recognize it. That was because he had once used this cannon shell to spur soul engineers to obtain good results in the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament, back when he was still the Duskwater Alliance Master. Hua Yuhao had absconded with this cannon shell and other items during the major explosion in Radiant City. He had kept this Class 9 stationary soul cannon shell all this while, and given the rest of the items to the Tang sect. Sensing the aura coming from this Class 9 cannon shell, Hua Yuhao was in awe. This is a true strategic weapon. Xian Ziwen had once told him that even a Class 9 soul engineer would need 3 to 6 months and a lot of rare metals to complete the production of such a soul tool. Every time such a soul tool was created, it also drained the energy of a Class 9 soul engineer greatly. As a result, such a strategic weapon was very rare, even in the Sun Moon Empire. Initially, the Sun Moon Empire had breached the Mingdo mountain range using 3 such Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells, blowing a canyon open in the mountains. Hua Yuhao still remembered the event clearly. This was his first time trying something as terrifying as this. It was a little too much for Hua Yuhao to use a Class 9 soul tool, given his current cultivation. However, a stationary soul cannon shell was different. The thing about this shell was that it wasn't difficult to operate, it just had to be detonated. It was basically just an extremely terrifying bomb. The energy it needed was contained within it, and didn't need any soul master to pour in his soul energy. Of course, it was a different thing when using a specialized soul cannon to fire a long-range attack with it. If possible, Hua Yuhao was far more willing to fire it using a soul cannon. It was an ultra-long-range weapon that could reach more than 15 kilometers away, far more powerful than an ordinary shell. Hua Yuhao wasn't aware of what its furthest range was, only a Class 9 Soul Engineer would know the exact distance. However, he had no choice right now. This shell was the best option he had. His spiritual entity lifted the massive shell with both hands. Hua Yuhao twisted around to take a look before walking behind the main seat in the tent, mounting it. It wasn't difficult to fire this Class 9 stationary soul cannon. Its core formation just had to be triggered. As a Class 7 Soul Engineer who had manufactured a Class 8 Soul tool, it wasn't difficult for Hua Yuhao to trigger the core formation of this soul cannon. After placing the soul cannon shell, Hua Yuhao put the box away. The box was still valuable, as it could isolate the aura of a Class 9 soul cannon shell. After settling everything, his spiritual entity didn't leave. If he wanted to trigger it at the best moment, he had to do it personally, rather than setting a time for it to detonate on its own. Because of this, Hua Yuhao had no choice but to lose some of the spiritual power that he had left in his spiritual entity. He could only try to escape when the time came. If he couldn't, he could only accept his fate. After completing all this, he had already opened his eyes in his own tent, and started muttering some incantations. A spiritual barrier formed inside his own tent. Not long afterward, a pitch-black door slowly opened, and figures started to silently walk out from it. The tent, which was originally quite spacious, became a little cramped quickly. The Ice Bear King was the last to walk out. He was so huge that he took up the most space in the tent. "Yuhao, are you ready?" Elder Song asked Hua Yuhao. Hua Yuhao nodded and said, "I've already installed a Class 9 stationary soul cannon shell called Annihilation Storm. It's a Class 9 soul tool that is specifically targeted to destroy metal. It's very destructive. Furthermore, it causes destruction from the inside out. That Soul Engineer Legion will definitely be annihilated. I just don't know how many people will die because of it." Yang Shaozhe said, "Yuhao, you're too soft. This is war, and people die. What we need to do is to end it quickly to prevent more people from dying because of it. Destroying strategic machines will save more people. Do you understand?" Hua Yuhao nodded slightly. After enduring many fights, he had already accepted some aspects of war. Elder Song said, "It's about time. Get ready to take action." Hua Yuhao looked at the timer that he had prepared beforehand and nodded at Elder Song. "We'll help the Heavenly Soul Empire destroy a Soul Engineer Legion this time. This will greatly alleviate the pressure on them. It can also be considered repayment to them for redeploying their army." As he spoke, Hua Yuhao unleashed his spiritual detection and connected his mind to his teammates. His spiritual detection slowly spread out. He had already surveyed his surroundings, and covered every inch that didn't have a spiritual barrier. He provided a detailed layout of the area to his teammates, especially the tent that Tang Ya stayed in. "I hope everyone can listen to my commands later. After we save teacher Xiao Ya, we still need to return here and re-enter my spectral demiplane. We're only safe when that happens. We'll then think of a way to escape." Elder Song said, "Yes. From now on, we'll listen to your commands." Hua Yuhao was a little astonished when he looked at Elder Song. He only saw the encouragement in her eyes. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Hua Yuhao focused and switched his thoughts to his spiritual entity. The evil soul masters were stationed at the core of the entire base. This base contained more than 100,000 men, spreading more than 50 kilometers in every direction. The second soul formation was located near the edge of the base closest to the Heavenly Soul Empire. Hua Yuhao squinted, and a mysterious look flashed across his eyes. His spiritual entity also started to take action. His hands were pressed tightly against the shell and a streak of spiritual power poured in. This triggered the core formation of the Annihilation Storm. A terrifying pressure was released from the Annihilation Storm. Hua Yuhao only felt that his spiritual entity was about to be torn apart, while the Annihilation Storm shone brightly, and emanated a bright metallic glow. Hua Yuhao didn't dare to stall further. His spiritual entity was blown apart. He used the strength of the explosion to force a streak of his spiritual power to drill its way out of the tent. It quickly rose as fast as it could into the sky. He could only use this short period of time to preserve his spiritual power. Although it was only a streak, he would still be critically hurt if it was destroyed. Guo Enyu walked into his soul formation. His routine check was about to end. Although he was very familiar with his own legion, he would still feel a sense of pride every time he patrolled his soul formation. It wasn't just him. Almost all the soul engineers in the Sun Moon Empire that served in the military felt that they were an invincible presence on the continent. In their eyes, the three empires of the original Doluor continent lagged far behind them. Very soon, they would be conquered by the Sun Moon Empire. Only the Sun Moon Empire was fit to rule the entire continent and help the continent develop further. This is what you call a forest of steel. Guo Enyu nodded in satisfaction as he took a last look at his soul formation. Surveillance to the outside were lessened today after orders came down from the top. In this way, the soul engineers had less of a workload. Otherwise, the soul engineers had to be divided into 3 shifts every day to operate the surveillance soul tools. At least half the soul engineers needed to pour their soul power into the soul tools every day to maintain them. Although this was the most effective, it weakened the fighting strength of the soul engineer legions. It wasn't easy for Guo Enyu to climb to his current position. He took good care of his subordinates. In his heart, they were his most precious resource. Comparatively, soul tools weren't as important. If soul tools were drained, they could be replenished. However, soul engineers couldn't be easily replaced. Just as Guo Enyu was about to return to his tent, he suddenly felt that something wasn't right. The surrounding atmosphere seemed to have changed. As a Class 8 Soul Doluor, his senses were still quite acute, even though he wasn't a traditional Soul Master. When he realized something was amiss, he subconsciously turned in the direction that he felt something from. What he saw was a strange light flashing from his commander's tent. Hey! What's going on? Guo Enyu was alarmed. There seemed to be an intense beam of light coming from the tent, gradually strengthening. An invisible killing aura was also rising from the tent at an incredible speed. However, it seemed to have been suppressed, so the beam of light wasn't completely unleashed from the tent. This is not right. Something's going wrong. Guo Enyu shouted, "Everyone, be careful. Unleash our linked defense. Quickly." Although he didn't know what was going on, he was always very prudent. However, it was already late at night. Apart from the soul engineers on duty, the other soul engineers were already sleeping. Under such circumstances, not many heard his shouts. Guo Enyu quickly unleashed his Class 8 protective soul barrier and rushed in the direction of his command tent. At the same time, he sounded the alarm. Suddenly, the entire soul formation rang with deafening alarms. Even the troops stationed at the perimeter could hear them clearly. The Sun Moon Empire's Soul Engineer Legions were elites that were well trained and very experienced. The Second Soul Engineer Legion was one of the original 10 Soul Engineer Legions, and they were all veterans. Once the alarm sounded, the Soul Engineers on duty immediately reacted. Beams from soul rays shone. The first to be activated was the linked defensive formation. A filmy layer of white light immediately shone. Promptly, a second linked defensive formation was unleashed within the soul formation. However, it was also at this moment that the light in the commander's tent was fully unleashed. Guo Enyu had already rushed in front of the tent at this moment. He pulled the curtains apart. As he pulled them apart, he immediately unleashed an invincible barrier. Although he didn't know what was inside the commander's tent, he could still sense an extraordinary presence inside from the intense light, and a growing killing aura. This was why he was especially wary. When the curtains were pulled open, a strong aura swept towards him. Guo Enyu's Class 8 barrier immediately shook. Cracks appeared in the surface of his protective barrier, while the terrifyingly sharp killing aura immediately burst out of the tent. The tent and everything inside it was torn to pieces. Guo Enyu suddenly opened his eyes wide. He finally saw what was releasing the light. It was a stationary shell. As a Class 8 soul engineer, Guo Enyu was also very adept at creating all types of soul tools. He could immediately recognize what that shell was. His voice cracked as he exclaimed, a Class 9 stationary shell. As he exclaimed, he immediately turned and ran away. At this moment, He hated his parents for only giving him a single pair of legs. He ran as fast as he could. However, at this instant, Guan suddenly felt that everything around him had turned illusory and became unreal. The entire spatial dimension seemed to have been torn to pieces instantly. This included his Class 8 protective soul barrier and his invincible barrier. Guan was dazed. He only felt that his body and spirit had flown into the air and were flying higher and higher. Everything around him was unreal. Below him, an unprecedentedly bright light made his distorted reality even more surreal. And then, he didn't know what happened anymore. Class 9 stationary shells were known as the most destructive Class 9 soul tools. This was because it was very difficult to construct a Class 9 stationary shell that wasn't weaker than a Class 9 soul tool. In the process of making it, one didn't have to worry about whether the shell could handle its explosive nature. As a result, Class 9 stationary shells were the symbols of extremity. More simply put, the power of a Class 9 stationary shell was equivalent to an all-out attack from an ultimate Doluor. It could even cover a larger region. Guan wasn't weak. He was a Class 8 soul engineer. However, he had no chance against a Class 9 shell from such a short distance away, no chance at all. Annihilation Storm. Even Hua Yuhao didn't know the true strength of this stationary shell. He had absconded with the shell before Nangong Wan could warn him. Right now, this shell that the Holy Ghost Church had used a lot of effort to obtain in the past fully unleashed its strength. The first step was only a terrifying explosion followed by an extreme surge in temperature and heavy pressure. During the explosion, thin bearings were released from the shell. Each of these bearings was only the size of a fingernail. They scattered very quickly during the explosion. They penetrated almost anything, but they would stick to metal the moment they touched it. They were called metal bombs, and were Class 3 soul tools. However, they were also stationary soul tools, and could only be used once. Metal bombs were also known for destroying soul tools. They were made from special and rare metals called golden fusion crystals. These rare metals could fuse with most other metals. Soul engineers used a special point about this rare metal to carve high explosive core formations on the crystals. Once these crystals touched other metals and fused, the high explosive core formations in them would come into effect. Because the crystals were already inside metal, the explosion would occur inside the metal. As a result, the metal would be turned into smithereens during the explosion and scattered, thereby causing even more damage. These secondary explosions were the reason why this Class 9 shell was called Annihilation Storm. When creating this Annihilation Storm, 1,080 metal bombs had to be created, before being placed inside the Annihilation Storm. After that, golden fusion crystals had to be used, while creating a protective layer to prevent the metal bombs from touching any other metals. The protective layer was a vacuum that contained spatial power. This could only be done using some very complex core formations. A strong defensive core formation was then placed on the surface, while all types of explosive core formations were installed inside, along with some complex core formations to support them. The result was this Annihilation Storm. Once it blew apart, the explosive strength that it unleashed was like an ordinary Class 9 high-explosive stationary shell. After that, the metal bombs inside would be scattered in a region spanning a kilometer across. These metal bombs would generate a second explosion when they touched any other metals. As a result, this Annihilation Storm was much stronger when there were a lot of metals around. However, its true explosive strength was still weaker than the stationary shells that the Sun Moon Empire had used to bomb the Ming-Do mountain range. Although Hua Yuhao didn't know the true strength of this Annihilation Storm, he knew that it had something to do with metals. This time, his target was the Soul Formation. Moreover, there was no better choice for him, so he unleashed the Annihilation Storm here. Even Hua Yuhao didn't expect he'd make such a correct choice. Under the terrifying explosion, the entire Soul Formation became like a high-temperature, high-pressure ocean. Almost the entire Soul Formation suffered from the shockwaves as tremendous booms resonated through the air. It was a Class 9 stationary shell. It was so terrifying that anyone would shudder just looking at it. The right thing that Guan Yu did before he died was to command his men to unleash their linked defensive formation. The Soul formation of the Second Soul Engineer Legion was engulfed by that linked defensive formation immediately. When this defensive formation was used too suddenly, it first needed milk bottles to provide soul power. If it lasted too long, Soul Masters needed to pour their own soul power in. As a result, the explosion of the Annihilation Storm was like an explosion within the linked defensive formation. The protective strength of this linked defensive formation was quite impressive. Even though it instantly came under enormous pressure and was slowly breaking down, it still managed to resist the Annihilation Storm at its peak strength. However, there was still a flaw in this. Because the explosive strength of the Annihilation Storm couldn't spread out, it naturally took effect on everything within the formation. Almost all the Soul Engineers were killed instantly. These Soul Engineers averaged 3 rings. How could they possibly resist the strength of the Annihilation Storm? The metal bombs that flew out landed inside the formation as they were blocked by the formation itself. However, there were soul tools everywhere inside the soul formation. What were soul tools made from? Metal. Metal bombs were very complementary to metals. This meant that they became even more explosive as a result of this. Only a few rare metals couldn't be destroyed by these metal bombs. However, the soul tools used by the Second Soul Engineer Legion weren't the best in the Sun Moon Empire. How could they possibly be made from the rarest metals? Suddenly, the metal bombs that were deflected found their carriers. In the next moment, a second round of explosions occurred. The linked defensive formation collapsed. Broken pieces of metal were flung everywhere. Linked defensive formations were supposed to be stronger, but they were mainly used to block external attacks. Since when were they used to contain attacks? It wasn't easy for this linked defensive formation to contain the first explosion. However, as all the soul tools were destroyed, the linked defensive formation also collapsed. It had no chance against the second round of explosions. The nearby tents were immediately torn to pieces. The broken pieces of metal were flung more than 1,000 meters away. Within this region, almost no soldier survived. The explosion and flying metal shrapnel opened a huge gap in the Sun Moon Empire's base in just a couple seconds. The explosions were so tremendous that the entire base was alerted. At the core region where the evil Soul Masters were stationed, all the evil Soul Masters rushed out of their tents, and only saw surging lights in the distance. Suddenly, deafening alarms rang out across the entire base. Linked defensive formations in the various soul formations were unleashed. These linked defensive formations appeared extremely bright at night. Zhongli Wu also walked out from his tent. Seeing the bright lights in the distance, he was also astonished. What's going on? Where is that place? Zhongli Wu shouted. Evil Soul Masters were very united. Many evil Soul Masters immediately gathered towards Zhongli Wu. Hua Yuhao estimated that there were around 40 Soul Masters here. Apart from the titled Doluor, the rest were all at least Soul Emperors. Tang Ya naturally walked out from her tent. She looked as indifferent as ever, not much different from before. The Scorpion Tiger Doluor Zhongpeng was beside her. He looked on in shock, very grim. Zhongli Wu was very calm, and said, "An enemy attack. Everyone, be prepared to defend. Don't separate from the group without my orders." Screams rang out in the distance. The sky above Heavenly Spirit City brightened, and countless Soul Masters, emanating light from their bodies, shone brightly on the horizon. This was... Zhongli Wu was astonished. Just from what he could see, there were more than 3,000 Soul Masters flying in the air, which meant every single one of the Heavenly Soul Empire's main forces who could use flying-type soul tools. Were the Heavenly Soul Empire making a last-ditch attempt? The third elder walked swiftly in front of Zhongli Wu and whispered, "Supreme Leader, the explosion should be from where the Second Soul Engineer Legion is stationed. Judging from how forceful the explosion was and the soul power undulations in the air, it's very likely to have been from a stationary soul cannon shell." Zhongli Wu was both shocked and furious. What? A stationary soul cannon shell? Isn't the Sun Moon Empire the only one who possesses things as terrifyingly destructive as that? How did the Heavenly Soul Empire come to have one of those? Even if they did, how did they fire it into our camp? What has happened to our surveillance soul tools? Of course, None of the evil soul masters next to him could answer his questions. Hua Yuhao was standing among the other evil soul masters like Nangong Wn was, but his attention was fully concentrated on Tang Ya. He was waiting for an opportunity, and this opportunity was slowly forming after the enormous explosion, which, along with the Heavenly Soul Empire's attack, looked like an all-out assault had begun. The Sun Moon Empire's reaction was quick. Even though the explosion caught everyone off guard, the entire camp began to move even as the hurricane of metal was wreaking havoc. Orders were given one after another, and Lin Hai, who was the marshal, had already entered the command tent and was directing his army. The other 4 soul tool fronts weren't affected by any aftershocks or ripples. They activated their linked defensive formations, and they also began to charge their linked offensive soul tools to prepare for battle. Back when the Sun Moon Empire was constructing their base in this place, they had been prepared for a long, drawn-out battle. They had camped several dozen kilometers from Heavenly Spirit City. There were only several special stationary soul cannon shells that could reach that far. Therefore, not even their linked offensive formations could cross that distance. They had to wait for the Heavenly Soul Empire's powerful individuals to come within range before they could retaliate. A messenger swiftly ran over and announced, "Imperial Tutor, Commander Lin Hai invites you to discuss matters in the commander's tent." Zhongli Wu nodded and said, "Please follow me, consecrates. Everyone else will remain here. Do not leave unless absolutely necessary." "Yes." The group of evil soul masters bowed in acknowledgement. Zhongli Wu brought 6 consecrates, including the Scorpion Tiger Doluor, and proceeded quickly towards the command tent. The other evil soul masters all remained behind, including Tang Ya. Hua Yuhao heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Zhongli Wu didn't take Tang Ya away. He could see his opportunity coming. There were more than 30 evil soul masters remaining. There were 4 titled Doluor within this group, including Hua Yuhao, who was impersonating the masquerade Doluor, Nangong Wan, the 3rd elder, and the 4th elder. That meant their real enemies were only the 3rd and 4th elders. Tang Ya was probably the strongest one out of the other evil soul masters. Even though there were several soul Doluor, they were few in number. Deafening war cries could be heard in the skies over Heavenly Spirit City, like there weren't just many soul masters moving out in the sky. It looked like their army was also pushing forward over the ground. The Sun Moon Empire couldn't understand why the Heavenly Soul Empire had chosen to launch an assault at night, because nighttime wasn't beneficial for their foot soldiers. Furthermore, the Sun Moon Empire had several soul tool fronts in place, and with how strong they were, even titled Doluor would be going towards certain death if they charged them. The Heavenly Soul Empire would have to pay with far too many lives without Heavenly Spirit City's protection to reach them. However, the Sun Moon Empire didn't dare to underestimate their enemies, even if that was the case. The large explosion in the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion camp was enough to shock everyone. If the Heavenly Soul Empire could do that, what else could they do? Hua Yuhao gestured at Nangong Wan with his eyes, and Nangong Wan nodded at him softly. Nobody knew what the enormous explosion was, but Nangong Wan could faintly guess. The only thing he didn't understand was exactly how Hua Yuhao had managed to place the stationary soul cannon shell into the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion's camp. A thread of spiritual power drifted over to Hua Yuhao and integrated into this body. Spiritual power was formless, and he wasn't afraid of anyone discovering it at all. He withdrew that thread, and could feel his spirit rejuvenate. The linked defensive dome had helped him, because his spiritual avatar had just barely risen into the sky enough before Annihilation Storm exploded. Guo Yu had ordered the linked defensive dome's activation, which blocked the explosion's first blast, and gave Hua Yuhao's spiritual avatar the chance to escape and return. "Second brother, let me go back and get something. I'll be back in no time," Hua Yuhao said to Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan nodded and said, "Go, come back as soon as possible." "Yes," Hua Yuhao acknowledged before he proceeded towards his own tent. The 4 elders took charge of this group. Even though Zhongli Wu had just instructed them to remain here, he didn't say that they absolutely couldn't leave. The masquerade Doluor was an elder, so nobody stopped him. The relationship between elders was different from that between the consecrates. There were evil soul masters among the consecrates, and powerful foreign soul masters. Even though they had a very high status, their relationships with one another weren't intimate at all. The elders were different, as they had almost grown up together in the Holy Ghost Church, and had been together for several decades now, some even more than a century. They had a good relationship with each other. The masquerade Doluor didn't quite fit into the group, but he was still friendly enough with the other elders. Therefore, the third elder and the fourth elder didn't speak out against him. Hua Yuhao quickly moved towards his tent, and returned in the blink of an eye. Nangong Wn glanced at him and nodded gently, but nobody was paying attention to them. The Sun Moon Empire's soldiers were fully mobilized. The army gathered swiftly, and military orders were passed out one after another from the command tent. The Sun Moon Empire's soul engineers were gathering at the soul tool fronts, and even appeared in the sky. Even though they were far fewer in number compared to the Heavenly Soul Empire, everyone knew that soul engineers had a great advantage on a battlefield against soul masters. They were an entire body with their linked soul tools. The explosion caused by Annihilation Storm was starting to recede and settle down. The terrifying explosion had engulfed almost a quarter of the Sun Moon Empire's main camp. Even though only the areas near the explosion's epicenter had sustained heavy losses, the explosion brought chaos and panic to the entire army. The command tent had to direct and prepare their army to defend against their enemies, and they also had to console their soldiers and take care of the wounded at the same time. The entire Sun Moon Empire's camp appeared to fall into disarray. The third elder frowned and wondered aloud, "That's weird. Why would a stationary soul cannon shell explode in our own camp? Could it have been an accident?" the fourth elder asked. The third elder shook his head and glanced at him disdainfully. "You're so ignorant. The Second Soul Engineer Legion doesn't even have a stationary soul cannon shell with their status, so how could it be accidentally triggered? Even the beast-ranked Soul Engineer Legions have one at most, and they're under strict protection. We don't even have a single one in our army camp because the two beast-ranked Soul Engineer Legions used their stock in the war before this." "Then what's going on?" the fourth elder asked, confused. "Can it be that spies have snuck into our camp despite our strict defenses? At least, I'm confident that nobody has that ability." Nangong Wn cut in appropriately and said, "Back when Old Seven and I went around the Heavenly Soul Empire, we discovered that Shrek Academy's people had appeared. Can this be them? It seems we have sustained incredibly large losses this time, and a Soul Engineer Legion has disappeared just like that. We aren't even talking about how many normal soldiers we've lost yet." The third elder frowned even more tightly and said, "Yes. It's no wonder the Supreme Leader isn't letting us go outside. Otherwise, I would want to see what kind of stationary soul cannon shell that was." Nangong Wn said, "The Supreme Leader is doing this for our own good. He's concerned about everyone's safety. You don't have to talk so much. All right." The third elder scanned the other evil soul masters. Everyone lowered their heads at the same time when they met his gaze, except for Tang Ya. Hua Yuhao said, "Second brother, why don't I take a look at the command tent? I want to find out exactly what is going on." Nangong Wn answered, "Go. But I reckon the Supreme Leader isn't in a good mood, so you'd best be careful." "Yes." Hua Yuhao acknowledged as he walked towards the command tent. Evil soul masters like them, especially those who were titled Doluor, had a transcendent status within the army camp. Even though they were on high alert and heightened vigilance, nobody dared to stop them. The third elder watched Hua Yuhao leave, and he couldn't help but comment, "Masquerade has been a lot more normal over the past few days. I think being with him is a lot more comfortable than before. I heard that he hasn't been ruining girls after the Supreme Leader chided him that day." Nangong Wn chuckled and said, "Maybe he's afraid that the Supreme Leader will punish him." The third elder grunted and said, "He knows how to be afraid. This isn't the first or second time that the Supreme Leader has chided him for that bad habit of his. Seems like he has promised him something this time. Do you know what that is, second brother?" Nangong Wn shook his head and said, "That, I don't know. You'd have to ask him or the Supreme Leader if you want to know. Him being more normal is a good thing." The fourth elder chortled and said, "Yes, that fellow is the most abnormal between us brothers. He's always living in his own world, so being more normal is a good thing. We can do anything if us brothers are united." Just as he was talking in amusement, the third elder suddenly frowned and commented, "Why do I feel like it's a little cold? Is the weather changing too?" This video will end here.